Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bad Occult Podcast, the podcast where we do, or at least talk about, inadvisable things in the name of magical science. I am Tyler Cadmian, aka Shadow, and with me remotely is.
Felix, S is for suffocating in gas, Warren.
Yeah, guys, this is unlucky number 13, Methane Edition.
Yeah, so I'm alone at home with only the methane and the cats.
Yep,
I'm here to clean out the rest of what's left.
yep. So, and I am elsewhere. So audio is going to be a little bit different this time. Testing out some things with remote stuff. In addition, those who are tuning in live or looking at the YouTube video may see something going on with Felix. You
Oh
need to
yeah.
you need to talk for it to
Yeah.
happen.
You can see it because I'm talking and you can see it when I'm
Yes.
talking.
So we figured out how to animate the mirror people. I'm
I
just
got mouth flaps, baby.
Yeah. And you got blink flaps, or you would if you didn't have sunglasses on your face.
Sunglasses are an easy way not to have to animate blinks.
Yeah. So that's a fun little thing for anyone who likes that kind of stuff. Um, it was fun to figure out. So, yeah. Also, not only is it the 13th episode, but this is the last episode of 2024.
That's right, this is it.
This is it. This is
Get
how
out of this year.
get out. Get out.
You're not allowed in this year anymore. Get out of it.
No. So yeah, you know, like to start out with more of a general topic. Do you do New Year's resolutions, Felix?
Um I don't like really hold myself to one in specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it depends on kind of how the beginning of my year is actually going,
Mm-hmm.
whether even in a place to be doing that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's never been like a really important thing that I actually do it and hold through with it. Um, I I think because you've really got to be flexible all year.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like we've had some curveballs thrown at us like several times in like the middle of a year or something will happen and that will completely derail what we would have said for a New Year's resolution. And also like I mean, you've been talking a lot more about stuff like hypnotism, which has some sort of time manipulation effects. So it makes those kind of things kind of hard. But
Yeah, we're going to be having an actual time traveler come and talk once the new year
the new
comes.
year.
So
So yeah, little preview for next week, next Sunday. First podcast of 2025 is going to have a time traveler. And so the last podcast of 2024 is going to have a diviner.
that's
I
right.
love this bookend. I
Someone who knows all about divination and prognostication and all kinds of other things.
Yeah. So we're going to have a two-parter again. We're going to have divination this week, and then we're going to have time travel next week. And it's been really interesting talking to the people who we're going to be interviewing because, like, finding out how divination and time travel actually complement each other when they sound like they would contradict each other has been very interesting.
Definitely. Actually, I want to kind of mention a couple of things that'll be different between this podcast and the next.
Hmm.
By the next podcast, all of the methane boxes are going to be gone.
Right.
So there will be less methane in the house. It will not be completely gone yet. It will still be airing out.
Yeah.
We'll have only had a week since then, and so you'll have a difference between the levels of methane that previous podcast guests have been
Yes.
exposed to and the new ones will be exposed to. Um, and also, one thing I wanted to point out, different entities, whenever they channel into different bodies, are able to deal with different substances
Yeah.
to different degrees. And I've been trying to demonstrate how well I'm not doing with the methane right now.
Mhm.
Um, like this is I'm usually a bit more on point during a podcast than how I sound here,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely drifty.
Um
Um,
and I
and I want
do
the audience to pay attention to
yes.
how different it is when Umbra comes up.
Yes. That's one of the things I'm gonna note. Like, we actually have video up. We're not recording it because it's just too much for the hotel like Wi-Fi to try to stream. So the artifacting would be absolutely horrendous. But I'm monitoring, and we've already had some glitching in like our video equipment.
Yeah, I haven't been really looking at the video because I have trouble doing that and actually concentrating on being on the podcast right now.
It's something I kind of want to bring up because like it sort of ties into the New Year resolution thing because I'm actually trying to be more organized about stuff. So one of the things that I'm
Hmm.
going to start doing during podcasts is actually make note of things that I noticed during the podcast because you and I and like several people in like our group have been having discussions amongst ourselves in group context about audio glitches that people are noticing after the fact. But
Yeah,
especially now that like we're in two different places, internet lag and like visual glitches on video are very telling indicators of like psychic activity.
it gives us more information to
Yeah.
log.
And so part of me being organized is I'm actually going to start making notes of like timestamps and stuff of that during podcasts.
Cool.
So have more stuff. In addition, some more show notes. So someone we actually will have to interview soon. Um, because so a member of the crew wants to run sort of like a fan version of a podcast.
All right.
I'm just
I don't
gonna
remember if
name
I
her.
know about this yet.
Jin
Mhm.
wants to run the aftercast.
Ah, the aftercast.
Yeah.
I
So,
think that I think that fits. We were already talking about the aftercast.
yeah.
I think Jin would be very fitting to run it.
So instead of me interviewing and hosting that part, like what's going to happen, just to explain it to the viewers, is that what's going to happen live is that we're going to go offline and then we're going to come back online on Twitch, but it's going to be the Batacolt podcast.
And that one is basically just after hours.
Right.
Uh,
I mean, because I want to show the reality of what we're doing, like not just like the podcast, because I feel like we've sort of got it polished, but there's a lot of stuff that happens like afterwards where it's like basically psychic aftercare.
yeah,
And
yeah. I don't know how to start showing it either.
yeah,
So I guess this is like a good way to do it.
yeah. So basically, that is not going to go up on YouTube for various reasons. One in which is in the title, hee hee, stoner pun. Um,
Like you can do that. It's just like you're not. It just won't get monetized. I
it won't,
think.
yeah, and I'd rather not deal with like the
I
strikes
do
and
want
stuff.
backups though.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna,
having some unlisted backups on YouTube, I think would be good.
yeah, we're gonna do unlisted videos and probably look into an alternate platform. I don't know.
That makes sense.
And then Do you want to talk about Peacock Planet here or at the end?
Let's talk about it at the end.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we got some stuff
I
going
think
on.
I'll have more to say at the end.
Ooh, after the diviner speaks.
That's right.
Yeah, we got some Peacock Planet news that's very exciting. But
Ah, I just got jumped by a cat.
oh, yeah, you're no longer we're no longer dealing with cats meowing. We're dealing with cats jumping up on us.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
on
out in the
you.
living room where
Yeah.
the cats can get me.
So, yeah, I think that's basically a lot of the like housekeeping notes that I wanted to make like going forward. Um I think this is going to be a very interesting new set of experiments. Uh but yeah. So,
Oh.
how are you doing, Felix?
I'm doing pretty good. I've got a cat to hug. I think I'm gonna stop being the one who's up for a while.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, so you want to go ahead and switch for Umbra?
Yeah, I just dumped the cat.
Great. All
Dumped her.
right. I'm going to get that graphic updated while you're doing your thing. I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, Felix
Zero.
is there we go. Sounds like Umbra is coming in. We'll just give her a chance to sort of settle in. And also display the wonderful animated work that um Umbra and Felix tag teamed on the live cast, and also in the YouTube video, you're going to see that Umbra is blinking, and when she actually starts talking, her mouth moves. So, very
That's
excited.
right.
Yes, there we go.
You can watch me
Welcome.
talk.
I can watch
Watch
you
me talk
talk.
all the time.
So yeah, welcome Umbra. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
Um, I'd definitely like to say that I'm doing much better here in the body than Felix was doing previously.
Mhm.
Um, Now, on the ship, I did prepare to have an actual come down here for the podcast sort of appearance. So,
Mhm.
I got myself all fortified and I did my proper meditations and all that. But
Excellent.
I'm also just handling the methane better than he is, to be quite
Mhm.
honest, and it's a real shame.
Yeah.
Um,
We're
but
still
yeah, this
like
was one of the things that we had been kind of discussing, like
mhm.
he and I, and also like us and the rest of the household,
Yeah.
is that like several of us that can come through and Felix are better at dealing with some of these factors than he is. So
Yeah.
sometimes we just come up for it.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense, and like really glad. I know you've already been a big help. I s- I wish that like I could handle it, but like cannot, just cannot. We did actually record an episode where we both got accidentally exposed to methane.
Hmm.
And I think that was episode 6 or 7. And just, I'm, I'll be honest, like, I'm really glad that we're committing to this as an experiment and like being very clear about that, because, like, just thinking back on that episode, I'm like, I would just wish we could just delete it.
I think it was very important data to be able to just record, like, here is what it is like when two people
Hmm.
try to just have a
And
conversation about just one topic and stay on it
yeah,
while being exposed to this gas.
yeah,
I mean, there's not a lot of other ways that you can really demonstrate it. with
Mhm.
kind of the means that we've got here. And honestly, if somebody wanted to do further exploration and further experimentation, they could start with what it is that we established there,
Yeah.
and they could build off of that. Have people answer questionnaires or something.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous.
Uh,
And like how understudied this is. Like there's we've been sort of talking about this for years. Felix has drawn a comic about his experience with methane.
mhm.
And like the lingering effects of it are what's really surprising because we have about 20 cardboard boxes left.
Yeah,
And
and I mean, I'm one of the ones who's basically helping clear them out.
yeah,
Um, and like, it's all about getting rid of that cardboard. There's quite a lot left, but it's more that the actual exposure to the gas
hmm,
seems to have some very very unique effects, and
yeah,
they're very difficult to counter because it's a gas that's literally associated with death.
yeah,
It's a very timeless kind of feeling, and it's just very associated with endings, despair, and um almost like having to accept the utterly inevitable on every level.
right.
And that's just not something that you want in your living room.
No. And that's what we
It's
have.
not something that you can just have just drifting by whenever you're trying to do your day-to-day life.
And that's what we have right now. Like,
Yeah.
and so I'm just thinking it's very thematically appropriate that you're basically cleaning out the last of the vestiges of this death gas as the old year dies.
I find it very interesting. Um, the the oracle at Delphi
Mhm.
that was above the volcanic gas.
Yes.
Um, they got to be exposed to this stuff and be
Yeah.
able to like say all their visions and stuff. But
Sulfur,
we've
methane.
got this stuff over here
Yeah.
happening all the time, and we don't get to just sit there and give prophecies and stuff.
Yeah. Though
Like,
we
if you want to
tried.
keep a house over here, you gotta like do chores and stuff.
We tried. There was a time, like in the house that we used to live in, where all our stuff got gassed. Before we moved into the apartments. Yeah. That got really, 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 really weird.
It did, and what's interesting is that um the divination was never really wrong.
Yeah.
um I'd say that the worst thing that can happen with divination is that the image is so warped
Hmm.
that it's difficult to make out what it actually is, and it can look like a lot of things.
It reminds me of the difference between like doing divination at a still pond versus one where it's like just pouring down rain. You just don't
Yeah,
even bother at that point.
there's other things that you start reading once that starts to happen. You start reading from the storm itself instead of bothering to read the surface of the pond.
Ooh, I didn't even think of that.
Like you start just talking to the weather at that point because the weather done shown up for you. Ask the wind what's going to happen because they're definitely
Hmm.
available.
I
Um,
love
I,
this.
I think so. There's several different ways of getting information. We made this one titled Divination, and divination is usually like figuring out what's going to happen with some tools.
Right.
Um, and specifically, you're figuring out what's going to happen in an intuitive manner, not in necessarily a scientifically detecting manner, like with say meteorology or something.
Hmm.
Um, Instead, you're actually consulting um, tools for psychics to figure out what is going to happen psychically.
Mhm.
Um, wow, the cat sure is crazy over here.
Oh no. The thing is none of that noise is coming in through Discord, so
I'm so
it's just
glad
sudden
because
silence and I have no idea what's going on.
it's very distracting over here.
So,
Um,
yeah.
so with divination, you you're basically trying to find out what's going to happen or trying to find out any kind of information really with tools, psychic tools. Whereas with prophecy, you just straight up get something.
Mhm.
It's like you get a prophecy, it comes true.
Mhm.
That sure happens.
Mhm.
Um, and there's technically some ways of inducing prophecies, but for the most part, people tend to focus on divination. That's kind of whatever it is that you're going to get whenever somebody wants on demand knowledge of the future.
So, yeah, we as a household have been utilizing divination a lot. Um, Surprisingly very effective at navigating as long as you have an agreed upon set of symbols.
I would definitely say that agreed upon set of symbols helps you do divination in the long term
Yeah,
because one reading that you do several months from now will actually be able to relate to a reading that you do now because you've got a shared system.
yeah.
Whereas it might be very difficult to compare those two readings if they were, say, two different spreads, two different decks, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, I think that the biggest thing that has been happening with this household when it comes to divination is being consistent.
Mhm.
You're usually using the same spreads or the same techniques over the course of days or months. And that means that if something is different, you see it right away
Mhm.
because you've got the same data set always showing up. So um it's very, very easy to see disruptions whenever you have things like that are very consistent.
Right. So, kind of talking about it in broad terms, but I just want to like bring it down. What we mostly use is we use tarot and we use Lenormand, specifically a grand tableau. So basically, the way the household uses it is like basically one-off questions, just like wanting to poke at a situation and more of a conversational type of reading. We'll do tarot, just free form spread. We don't really do pre-organized spreads at all. I can't even remember the last time that I pulled up like a spread.
It's technically doable. I know that Felix knows how to do it, but there's so many other ways of doing it that are so much faster
Yeah. Like we just
that you
basically
can just
ask
go
a
ahead and go off the
question,
cuff.
pull a card, ask another question, pull a card. That's sort of the way that we do tarot. If we need clarifications, we do that. One thing that I figured out this year, and I've talked about it, is sometimes divination can be fucked with. Um, Especially if you're known for using a certain type, like uh, tarot diviner versus oracle cards versus throwing the bones or something. Um, have a way to establish a status check. There was one time where my tarot readings were cursed to be the reverse of what they're supposed to be. And how I figured this out was like I asked how I was doing and I pulled the death card.
I
That happened
remember
3
that.
times in a row. Like I shuffled the deck, I even used a digital deck, and it gave me the death card every single time I asked, "How am I doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not dead."
Sometimes the tarot only has certain ways of telling you things.
And so it
If
literally
I'm under duress, I'm under duress.
It literally was like, yeah, I have to give you the opposite of what you're looking for.
So how did you how did you get rid of that?
I stopped reading. I stopped using divination altogether.
You stop just
I stopped.
altogether?
Yeah. Like most of the summer, I was not reading cards.
Oh, I see. You took a break.
Yeah. I mean, it explains a few things because I wasn't reading cards,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'd rather not try to interpret like deliberate reversals.
Mm.
I have enough.
See, the thing is, you can read without reversals.
Yeah.
So with that one, I would just start reading with a deck that didn't have reversals. In
See, I
and
wasn't
if you
smart
read with a
enough to
deck that
do
doesn't have
that.
reversals, then you always have to turn them upright anyway.
I just, I wasn't smart enough to do that. I just didn't.
Well, here's where you get to learn new stuff.
Yay.
This is going to be my biggest tip for you when it comes to divination
Hmm.
is own your deck. It is your deck. It is not someone else's deck. They don't get to tell you whenever you use reversals and when you don't use reversals. They don't get to tell you when your stuff is reversed and when it's not reversed. This is your deck. It does your divination for you, not for them. And that's the first thing that you have to establish because this is your tool for divination. It's an extension of yourself, and therefore it's all you. It's not them.
Hmm.
Um, and like when it comes to who are you asking, when it comes to what questions you're asking to the deck, we can get to that kind of stuff later. But the tool itself, that's yours.
Hmm.
The self that is encompassing it with your aura, your field, that's you. And so if you establish that very firmly and very overtly, it's very hard for them to get their toehold anymore.
Hmm.
Especially if they've no right to it in the first place. After that, in fact, if they try to stick around, you're kind of able to jerk them around for whatever it is that they're worth because they're kind of making themselves available to you at that point.
Mm. So you're talking about
So
any entities that are like specifically sent to like mess with your readings?
well, sometimes they can send an entity, or sometimes the person just psychically sends their own
Oh,
energy out to
goodness.
defeat you or whatever. So let's say that they send their energy out to your deck. Then I would say pick a card in your deck that symbolizes them. Maybe get the Hanged Man, um, and just like kind of pick that up by the corner and be like, "Okay, little baby, I've got you here now. What do you want? You're gonna be here all night until you're done. I'm not letting you out until then. This is my deck. You're in my deck. You shouldn't have been in my deck. You need to stay out
Umbra!
of my deck. You don't want this to happen again. Get out of my deck."
I'm dying!
And so it's like it's taking ownership of it. Um and does this personify objects
Yes.
like overly? Yes, but so does cursing other people's tarot decks in the first place.
Right?
So, I mean, you've got to play Barbie doll back.
You play Barbie doll at me, I'll play Barbie doll back.
There is an element of religion to divination. I mean, it's got divine right in there.
Hmm.
You're playing God in a sense anytime that it is that you say what's going to happen in the future or what's going to happen to someone or what's best for them.
Hmm.
Um and so when you do that, you really have to own that.
Hmm.
The tools that you're using, they're God's tools. Um they may not be the most perfect and infallible. This is not to say that the God that you are being for divination is perfect and infallible,
Hmm.
but you kind of have to be one to to do it, to properly do it.
Hmm.
Um, you've got to have some element of the holy to be able to do what I would properly consider to be divination.
Mhm.
It's definitely a reaching through the veil, and that veil is something that is somehow spiritual
Hmm.
as well as it is scientific to me.
Gotcha. Wow. I've never heard of divination being talked of in this way. So, really glad that we're recording
Well, you
this.
really got me at a fun night
I
because I'm being
know.
exposed to a bunch of gas that I'm not supposed to be exposed to.
I know.
I'm saying all kinds of things that I might not usually say.
Oh no. Yeah, no, like I think we've had a similar conversation. Like, I mean, I'll even say the date back in 2022. Like, there's been time skips where it's like,
Oh man.
we've had conversations like three times over. And this is starting to feel like one of those time skips of a conversation. So I might talk with, I'm sure our next guest for the time travel episode is going to listen to this one, and we're probably going to have some interesting things to talk about.
Oh yes, actually. Well, we got to get some of that in then. That's right.
Yeah.
He's
This
gonna
is a
be replying.
two-parter. Cause like the thing is
Oh,
like how
our
does
banjos
divin
are dueling.
huh?
Our banjos are dueling.
Yes, your banjos are dueling. Like since you've encountered time travel, how has divination changed for you?
Oh man. Um. So nothing that he's actually. So there's time travel that
I'm just saying
we
in
on the ship
general.
have done.
In general.
Um. And then there's other types of time travel that I'm getting familiar with when it comes to Venom's sort of thing.
Mhm.
And all of it falls within within what I already knew was possible and how divination was supposed to work.
Yeah.
Um,
Nothing
but
has
it's
clashed.
well, it's just that usually divination is kind of a default level of helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and when it comes to time travel, sometimes divination is just like a tiny bit of confirmation, but so much time travel already happened that you didn't really even need that.
Gold star.
And it mostly just proves that yeah, divination also respects the laws of time travel, as does time travel respect the laws of divination. Funny that we just watched that happen. Glad we know that now.
Right? Yeah, it's
And so
really
sometimes it just
interesting.
seems a little extra more than it seems necessary.
Yeah, totally agree. But yeah, so do you do end of the year spreads or like any kind of like readings on like what the next year is going to look like? Have you thought about doing any of that?
When there's certain transits happening, I kind of do some readings reflective of those.
Mhm.
But that kind of floats around all year.
Yeah, that's more like just general astrological. Like I can't tell you how many people celebrated when Mercury went direct on December 15th.
See, I don't really feel that anything special or unique happens whenever the year begins and ends.
Mhm.
It's that in particular doesn't actually mark anything auspicious happening.
Mhm.
Um Now in one's own chart there might be something important that's going on there or on the chart of a specific object or for a specific event in relation to a specific object maybe. But um the beginning and end of the year doesn't really mean anything to me.
Mhm.
So I don't really have anything respective of it for divination.
Mhm. So then would you what would you recommend for someone who'd be interested in like maybe doing some kind of divination? to look into like what's happening coming next?
I would say like either look at the next, like look at the first quarter of the year,
Mhm.
or look at the next event that is going to be auspicious in one's life.
Mm.
Um, because you could do a reading that's based on, what's the next big event, and then get a lot around that actual event and when it's going to happen and what's going to be happening around it.
Mhm.
Or you can do it according to the time, and then you might have like a third of the reading that's the quarter actually dealing with that event that you care about, and the
Yeah.
other two-thirds just not being when that happens.
Gotcha. Yeah, I get that. S- So, we touched a little bit on tarot, but I was wondering if you wanted to talk a bit about like Lenormand, because we've been doing a lot of Lenormand readings.
I'd like to talk about Lenormand, and also before we go after Lenormand, I'd like to talk about spheres and such.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so Lenormand, I'm not going to teach a whole bunch over audio on a podcast here without a whole bunch of visuals for it. I think that anybody could benefit from looking up a tutorial on how to do a grand tableau in the Lenormand.
Mhm.
And that basically takes all 36 of the Lenormand cards, which look a lot like oracle cards, and it lays them out into a specific pattern randomly in houses that are all assigned to the original 36 cards. And you compare where all those cards landed in relation to each other and where they landed in relation to their houses. And when you see the pattern that emerges in that, you start to see a story that unfolds
Mhm.
through the cards and the language that it is that they speak in.
Yeah.
And I really prefer reading like this because the Grand Tableau can tell you so many different stories at once
Mhm.
that it's very hard to miss any message it's trying to give, because even if you don't quite get it with like one major storyline that you can follow through it, you'll try another one and that one will also say the thing.
Right.
And you'll try another one and that one will also say the thing.
Right. No, it's been very interesting. That's definitely one that is more of a like hands-on learning. But once you start laying out the grand tableau and just like getting more familiar with the actual meanings, and that's another one where like after you start doing a lot of meanings, there are sort of like subtext to some stuff. Like, I feel like the fox especially has taken on some additional meanings, which have been fun. And the snake. Like most of the time whenever we're doing a reading about like how these bodies are doing, the snake indicates methane.
Yeah, so the snake can represent hypnotics, it
Yeah.
can represent psychoactives, it can represent poisons, um and all of those could be used to describe methane.
Mhm.
And also it can be described, it can sort of be used for mental illness.
Mhm.
um but it is often used with a deceptiveness in mind, so
Mhm.
um it's usually a warning that something is being deceptive, and I think that's a very
I
apt when it comes to methane, because methane, it gives very deceptive feelings to a person.
So one thing that I do want to also discuss is the specific thing that we use to do all our Lenny readings on, and that's a Lenormand board that
Yes.
Felix made. Like, I want to get pictures and attach it to the Tumblr post after the episode. But like, Felix took two pieces of masonite and basically hinged them together with some fabric and Mod Podge, and then literally just wrote out all of the grand tableau. Like if you just look at a regular picture of it and then imagine it on like a folding board, that's what he did. But it's been a game changer in doing readings. Like you don't have to remember the houses, you don't have to pull up the stuff because it's just right there, and it's at the right size for just laying it out. So it's like a pre-made spread board, but specifically for Lenormand.
Making a Lettermon board is a really good idea if you want
Mm,
to do Grand Tableau. If you want to do any kinds of Lenormand readings, you're going to want to have a big Grand Tableau layout, and it's so much easier if you have either a board or a cloth where it's
yeah,
just all pre-done.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to be laying that out over and over and over and over and over again,
yeah.
and that's too much time in your life.
It is like um Felix helped me get set up in the hotel room, and we actually did a couple of grand tableaus, and we tried using two decks, and like the reference cards kept sliding around, and we're like, oh, we should have brought the board. Like,
Yeah, there's like a lot of solutions you can have with Lenormand because if you just have two decks, then it is pretty easy to lay out the grand tableau because you've got the houses there with that one deck that you just put in order.
yeah,
But
clean up,
everything slides
a
around.
reset. It's a mess. So, yeah, anyone who's
Hmm.
looking into getting to Lenormand, um, man, I really I have several times before doodled ideas for Lenormand, like basically spread um, throws, like
Hmm.
embroidered uh, deck covers that would also roll out and be the grand tableau setup. But I haven't done that yet
Well,
because 2024 did
there's
not go the
always
way I
the
expected.
future.
There's always the future. So that's things having to do with Lenormand. Anything else you want to bring up?
Um, Spheres.
Spheres, yes.
So the stuff that we've talked about thus far is cartomancy specifically. It's telling the future with cards.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of other tools that you can use for divination. You can always use what's at hand and just make up a system right there. Often I find that's the most effective. Um, One particular means that I favor is using a sphere.
Mhm.
It can be a crystal sphere, it can be a metal sphere, it can be ceramic, it can be ivory, it can be an egg if you don't have a sphere. I understand. Um, you can even have a skull if you want.
Mhm.
Sphere adjacent. Um, but you're going to want to have something to gaze into. And when it comes to the spheres, if you can get a shiny sphere that has a very reflective surface, then you can actually gaze into that reflection and your eyes can start tracing out the actual curves of the space inside of the sphere.
Mhm.
And this is where you can start seeing into other dimensions.
Ah.
Um, you can actually pick up the geometry that people talk about whenever they say that space is being folded.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes you can bend the crystal ball in such a way that it bends the light for you to the right degree that you can get the kind of traveling that it is that you want to get done.
Mhm.
If it's traveling that you're trying to do, if you're trying to specifically see a long distance, then you might try to hone that light in a very specific, very focused way.
Mhm.
Um, and if you were trying to see, you would probably end up using crystal spheres that were a lot more transparent or translucent and
Mhm.
that you could actually see through very easily that would actually seem to enhance your vision.
Gotcha. So what if you're working with a sphere that's like more opaque?
One of my favorites is very opaque.
Mm.
It's blue goldstone,
Oh,
and
goldstone's so pretty.
that's it's this black, purple, blue, very dark, glittery substance that's actually a kind of resin.
Hmm.
Um, and goldstone is the original resin, and then there's different colors of it. Blue goldstone is the most common variant, and
Hmm.
there's sometimes green, but
Yeah.
I haven't seen a whole lot of that out there. And I think I've seen red.
Yeah,
Um,
goldstone, as it naturally is sort of a copper with golden flakes.
yeah,
The blue goldstone is a bluish to purplish hue resin with silver, sometimes gold, but I've mostly seen silver flakes. And then the green goldstone I've seen a couple of times, and it's green with al almost exclusively silver. I haven't seen gold flakes.
yeah, they're gorgeous.
They are. If
Um,
you get a good quality pour and like the uh, glitter is spread throughout really nice, it's like looking at a galaxy. It's really pretty.
So with blue goldstone, honestly, even if you get like a little marble of it, it's
Mhm.
still very effective
Mhm.
because it's really got that effect in it. If you don't have that exactly, then just something with like a lot of like dark purple or dark blue glitter
Mhm.
is the effect that I look for there. And so it's technically very opaque, but that glitter effect means that the eyes kind of skate beyond where the actual matter is,
Mhm.
because it looks like a star field.
Yeah. And how do you normally do divination or like reading with a more opaque stone?
A lot of it depends on like what's being asked and by whom.
Mhm.
Um, like when it comes to my personal stones, I wouldn't necessarily answer anybody's question with those.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're not even appropriate for it
Mhm.
because they're just like very personal to me. So they would answer best like questions about me and from me.
Mhm.
Um, but like if I were to have like a client sphere or one that I tend to consult with friends with
Mhm.
more often, um,
Then you would.
that one thing that you need to do is if you're reading for somebody else, you need to invite them to look into it as well.
Mm.
And you need to see what it is that they see in there. Because until you know what it is that they see in there, you can't really follow them into where it is in there that they went.
Ah,
Uh,
interesting.
there's uh, technically you're traveling between dimensions, but technically the crystal ball is kind of its own dimension.
Mhm.
So if somebody goes in there, they're technically in a location inside the crystal ball in that dimension.
Mhm.
So you can follow them in. And if you know it is where it is that they went, then you can have a lot more ability to understand what it is that they saw whenever they looked into your crystal ball.
Interesting.
Um, Now, I will say that if somebody wanted to like try to ensnare somebody's consciousness, they could use this for a tool
Mhm.
to do that. Um, that's not my interest. I
Mhm.
simply don't have the time to keep up that kind of terrarium. Um, but uh this kind of looking into somebody else's crystal ball stuff, you want to be wary whenever you do that.
Mhm.
Um, if somebody is asking you to look into a magic gem of theirs and you don't have a deep level of trust with them yet,
Yeah.
then try to do something anti-inductive while looking at their crystal if you decide to do so in the first place.
Mhm. That's a really good point. Like basic psychic protection is very important. Um,
Yeah, you'll want a shield when you're looking at somebody else's tools because like those are meant to interface with them, not you.
yeah,
So they're not going to protect you.
that's really cool. All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to share related to divination? Any last words?
Um,
Seems like we're sort of winding down.
there's a lot of stuff to find out there.
Hmm.
Especially if you're just kind of scrying and looking for nothing in particular. Don't be surprised if you find something,
Hmm.
or someone, and be polite, and maybe they'll give you their phone number, and you could talk to them again sometime.
The calling card. There you go.
That's right.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Umbra. This has been a lot of fun. I'm sure it's going to be fun to discuss, especially with the second aspect next week of time travel.
Yeah,
Um,
say hello to the time traveler.
I
I'm going to
will.
depart.
All right. Thank you again, Umbra. And I am going to do the important things here in the background while Felix gets settled back in. And there we go. Let's see how he's doing. I'm usually able to monitor things better because I'm in the same room, but since we're in different spaces, I'm sort of having to.
0.
There we go. He is zeroing, which is the first of three steps that we've discussed. So there we go. He is back.
Ugh. Put someone else in here.
I'm sorry. I know. I'm trying to keep this episode
I
kind of
had to
short.
say it. I had to say it.
I'm trying to keep
Um,
this episode kind of short because I know about the methane. Like, I mean, it's unlucky number 13 for a reason. And
God, she really
she
demonstrated, I
did.
think, how much better she is at dealing with it.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
No, we just had a great conversation for like 45 minutes, and you come back and you sound like absolute shit. I'm
Derp,
sorry.
derp, derp.
You know I love you. That's why I could say it to you. You sound like
I'm real
shit.
glad that you had that conversation.
So we're gonna keep this short so Felix can go and uh, get himself taken care of, get some fresh air, you know. But first off, we need to close things up. So if you want to contact us, ask questions, send in, questions for Umbra about divination, anybody that has been interviewed on the podcast, you can send a question in about myself, Tyler, about Felix, anything, any of these things that we've discussed. You can do that on badoccultadvice.tumblr.com. There's an ask box there. Or if you really don't want to brave the dumpster fire that is the hell site, that is Tumblr, you can send us an email, badoccultadvice@gmail.com. And yeah, that's basically it. This episode's going to go up on YouTube. And Happy New Year to anyone who is listening with any sort
Happy
of
New
like
Year.
continuity time wise. Happy past New Year to any future listeners.
To any future listeners, you're not in 2024, and you
Count your
probably
blessings.
feel good about that, don't
Count
you?
count your blessings. Or maybe you feel worse because of presidency stuff, but who knows? There, we covered both ends. Or nothing changed at all. True cold reading.
No,
All options.
I bet they feel smug. I bet they feel smug and good about themselves in 2025.
Here we go. Felix with a random prediction. All right.
There's time travel next episode. We got to make a bet.
Oh no. Yeah, that's what we've learned. Time travel is all about bets. It's very strange. It's so strange. A sure bet.
What
So.
else do you have?
So, do you want to talk about Peacock Planet?
Oh yeah, Peacock Planet. So, Peacock Planet. The first chapter of it is a web comic that I'm doing over on Tumblr. So you go to peacockplanet.tumblr.com,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole first chapter is up. There's about 16 pages in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a webcomic about psychics. And pretty soon it's going to feature a lot of time travel in the second chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's going to be coming out like over the course of this next week. I think there's going to be
Yeah.
pages coming out. And yeah, it's like a really interesting project to work on because the art itself, I like, I go through psychic experiences and I channel uh people, like some of them whom are guests on the podcast.
Yeah. Spoilers.
And they,
Some of the stuff on uh Peacock Planet is fictionalized autobiographical.
yeah, like you'll have a fun time
Mm-hmm.
reading Peacock Planet and trying to figure out whom
Who
is
is who?
whomst.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, sometimes they channel in and write the scripts or
Mm-hmm.
do some of the art.
It's really
So it's a
cool.
really collaborative experience. It's really fun to do.
And we're actually keeping track of that as well. Like, at some point, I want to do a whole episode on like how how we're organizing, how we're keeping track of this stuff, because I think that would be really interesting to talk about. How we're trying to
Yeah,
be
and it's still
scientific
kind of
about it.
a floating system.
Yeah. I mean, with the methane, it's been hard. And plus, like, Felix and I do have different systems for cataloging this kind of stuff because we've been tracking it ourselves. But that's probably for another episode, probably later in
Yeah.
January. But
I've been doing stuff like keeping track of who's doing which stage of the art,
mhm,
and like, you know, you can see by who signs it, like
yeah,
who did it.
those kind of things we're establishing right now so we can use them later, and it's so cool. Um, do you want to talk about the other new thing with Peacock Planet?
I don't really know too much about it, to be
Peacock
honest.
Planet
So
Plus,
okay,
everything that we can't put anywhere else.
yeah. Uh, the the fun materials,
Yes.
the adult materials, and or the materials that are too inductive to be on Tumblr.
Mhm.
When it comes to actual hypnotic material.
Yeah. Um, that's a lot of fun. We're going to be setting up an account for that. Initials of it start with an O and an F. I think anyone who is familiar with it knows what I'm talking about. So, and anyone who doesn't know, you're too young. We have the stream marked mature for a reason. We have this at 9 o'clock at night, Pacific Standard Time, for a reason. What are you doing up? Go to bed.
What are you doing staying up at Pacific Standard Time? Go to bed.
Go to bed, you child. It's freaking Sunday night. You got, well, no, it's a holiday, so they might not have school in the morning. But still, go to bed. And I think I'm basically preaching to the choir because you look like you're going to go straight to bed.
Yeah, I do think that it'd be fun to shuffle over for the after party. I'm not going to be there for that.
No. Yeah. So, all right. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another wild episode of Bad Occult Podcast, where we do, or at least talk about, inadvisable things in the name of magical science. I, as always, have been Tyler Cadmian, aka Shadow, and with me for most of the time,
I kind of lost track of myself. I'm in methane. Help! Help! Help!
you're Felix.
I'm Felix. I'm Felix S. Methane.
All right, guys, we're going to end unlucky number 13 on that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoy the next episode.
Bye.